and welcome to another edition of Film Diaries. So those of you who subscribe to my channel for film-related content, I kind of feel sorry for you because I very scarcely post film stuff. I do mean to, it's just that music is probably more of a hobby for me than films, but films are still up there, of course. I watched very few movies throughout November, December time, but come January, I've just been watching loads of them, you know, not necessarily one every night, but just pretty regularly. I think that's pretty true, you know, of just the habits of film watching. Sometimes you just go on these long kind of dry periods where you don't watch anything, and then other times you're watching you're just watching them constantly. So I'm going to start out by talking about this little thing right here, Saturday Night Fever. This is one of my favourite movies of the 70s. I hadn't seen it for years, and it really was an absolute blast from beginning to end. I don't think 70s New York can really be beat in terms of vibe in a movie. The B-plots of this movie are very good. There was a hilarious moment in this film where they beat up the kind of rival gang of Tony's friends, and they smash through the window, which has this amazing sequence, looks fantastic on 4K, where they crash the car through the window and they play it in slow motion and they beat the shit out of him. And then they're visiting their friend in the hospital having done this, which is the reason why they beat up the gang, because they thought he was beat up by them. And then he goes, I think it was those people. And they all kind of look at each other like, it turns out they've beat up the wrong gang and stuff. It kind of feels as if this movie has 3 or 4 distinct acts. A lot of my favourite movies of all time do that, where, rather than feeling like a movie, it kind of almost feels like a mini-series comprising of 3 or 4 parts. The 4K looks really good, but it mainly shone on the outdoor scenes, so all of the street scenes, and particularly those big wide zooms on the Manhattan skyline and those beautiful shots we get of Verrazano Bridge. Obviously top soundtrack, one of the finest movie soundtracks to ever exist, pretty much, by the Bee Gees. Also, Kool and the Gang, Casey and the Sunshine Band, David Shire. So yeah, this was great. Great fun, great movie. So next up I've got The Running Man. So this was very disappointing considering it was an Edgar Wright movie, although it did contain some classic Edgar Wright chops throughout, such as things like particular choices of sync music and other kind of classic Edgar Wright moves, if you like, which are in all of his films, going all the way back to when he did Spaced. This movie took ages to get going. It took about 45 minutes to actually get into it, but then there was this section right in the middle which lasted, about 40 minutes, which was just brilliant. It was just action-packed, classic Edgar Wright, it was actually really exciting, and then it kind of dulled down a bit towards the end. But when that 40-minute chunk ended and fizzled out, it left me a bit bored once again. We saw this movie in one of the big cinemas in Leicester Square, and there was a man sitting right next to us, sort of dressed in formal clothes, wearing work clothes, eating a Pret-a-Manger, and about half an hour into the film, he very abruptly ran out of the cinema, really quickly, and he never came back. I wonder what that was all about. Maybe he forgot that he had to go back to work or something. I have no idea. So the next movie I watched was 28 weeks later, The Bone Temple. I was pretty disappointed and underwhelmed with this film, if I'm being totally honest. I found it to be a bit of a depressing extension of the last film. I much preferred 28 Years Later, which came out last year. I found that a lot more colourful and exciting and just had more to it, to be honest. And also the whole fact that this movie's called Bone Temple. It's like, we've already seen the Bone Temple. We already know about that. So you're immediately selling it badly. Yeah, I felt as if that last movie actually brought something new to the table with the franchise, and it included some interesting new concepts kind of thrown into the mix, which we hadn't seen before. This one was just plain unpleasant and a bit one-dimensional. The film just focuses around this gang or cult which is seemingly dedicated to Jimmy Savile, who basically run around torturing people, led by Jack O'Connell. It's never explained why they follow Jimmy Savile, or it never gives you any insight into how this sort of Jimmy Savile cult or gang has come about. Ralph Fiennes was by far my favourite part of the whole movie. I found his character to be a very kind of relaxing on-screen presence and a great source of solace among the madness. His character had great taste in music as well, and he played tracks by Iron Maiden, Radiohead, and largely Duran Duran. He had a great record collection in the film. There was a great storyline going where he was kind of curing one of the infected using morphine and training him back to normality, sort of like what we see in Day of the Dead from 1985. However, especially towards the end, there are a few bits where I was just sitting thinking to myself, this is getting really silly now. But then again, everyone that I saw the movie with really enjoyed it. So what do I know? I saw this at the Everyman Cinema, and they do sublime milkshakes. Next movie I watched was Doctor Strangelove. I loved Peter Sellers in this movie, and all three roles that he played in it, I found it entertaining, a kind of bizarre balance of comedy and very serious subject matter, which is a combination that not everybody enjoys or gets. You know, anything to do with dropping the atomic bomb is going to be pretty depressing and pretty heavy, but it was at the same time a hilarious movie, which is, you know, quite odd, a bit like Clockwork Orange, I suppose. You know, very serious subject matter, comes across very serious, but is actually pretty funny if you get the humour. I like the scene where Peter Sellers is on the phone to the president, also played by Sellers, and he makes a man shoot the Coca-Cola machine to get the pennies out of it so that he could stay on the phone to him. And he's got like sacred like codes or something, which, like, you know, kind of important to the future of humanity even existing. He gets squirted in the face with a load of coke. I like the scene at the beginning with all those old-fashioned computers with all the giant tape reels moving around really fast. And there was a funny bit where he was saying he was tortured by the Japanese in World War II, but it's a shame because they make such great cameras. There was also an interview with Kubrick on the DVD. Where is it? Here it is. Sorry, Blu-ray, actually. It's the Criterion Blu-ray I've got. About the process of making the film and how he edited the film himself, and it was more common practice in those days to just hire a professional film editor who would edit the film as it was being made. So, you know, even in relatively early days of filmmaking, well, not that early days of filmmaking, but back then, you know, Kubrick was really kind of taking charge of the whole operation, which was less common in the early 1960s, this was. But, I may have showed this on YouTube before, but it's like a nice digipack design, and comes with the kind of like the things that the props from the film, you know, the top secret file. Within that, we get the image that was used to promote the film, restricted, top secret, and you even get that Russian phrases, Holy Bible Russian phrases, exactly like what you see in the movie. So the next movie I watched was After Hours, which is a Martin Scorsese film. My brother thinks this is one of his best directorial efforts, you know, at least maybe top 3 is what I think he said. It reminded me of one of those kind of one-off episodes of a TV show, like an anthology story. Made me think of things like Inside Number 9, but given the kind of 80s New York Scorsese treatment. This film is about a series of kind of misadventures of a guy in one night. And me and my brother were saying how it kind of reminded us of the episode Rock Bottom, the SpongeBob episode, where he's trying to get home, but everything he does just lands him in more trouble, basically. Gets him into even more of a mess than the previous thing he did. This movie just goes on, and it makes you start to think, where is this going to end? Like, you know, it's just going on and on and on. He's getting himself into more and more of a pickle, and just all these bizarre random happenings keep going on, you know. It's quite surreal. It's quite dreamlike. The whole movie is like an anxiety dream. That's the best way you can possibly describe it. It actually reminds me of the kind of dreams that I have. Just dreaming that you've done something really wrong. Oh no, what am I going to do about it? I've got to go and do this. But then you go and get yourself in more trouble by doing that. And the score was really good on this film. It had this really spooky, bubbly, echoey synth, which kind of emphasises the surreal tone of it. And also the whole movie was shot at night on location, so it had great atmosphere. And yeah, Scorsese made this movie, I think, on a relatively low budget. It wasn't written or produced by him. He was just the director. He was asked to do it because he was going to do The Passion of Christ, but that movie kind of fell apart and he was very depressed about it. And then this movie kind of lifted his spirits again, making this. And then eventually he did get to make The Passion of Christ a couple of years later. The Last Temptation of Christ, that is, not The Passion of Christ. Got that wrong before you correct me. So the next movie I watched was Audition. I forgot I was even watching a horror movie for the first half an hour of this. This is a very unique horror movie. It's not like an other horror movie I've seen. It's not cliche in any way. It had quirkiness to it. It had creative effects, really good visual ideas and scare tactics. One of the sequences in this movie reminded me of Eyes Wide Shut, where we kind of follow the main character around and him going to different places, and it's all quite quiet and eerie. Essentially the premise of this movie is that a widow's son persuades him to potentially find another wife, and he exploits his position as a casting director to potentially scope out another wife. So he pretends to make a movie and does a bunch of auditions to, you know, kind of meet different women, and he finds this one girl who's on the cover here, and she's kind of like his dream girl, I suppose, and it turns out she's a lot weirder than he thinks she is. to put it lightly. And she has a bit of a background as well. And I will not ruin the movie for you. I don't want to spoil it, but it does have quite a disturbing climax. But yeah, the whole movie is quite normal up until that point, actually. It's quite tame, and then all of a sudden at the end it's like, whoa. So last, but certainly not least, I finally rewatched American Psycho for the first time on 4K. So this is one of those movies which is so good, when you finish it, you just want to start it all over again. One of my favourite films. I only watch it once every few years, and the movie goes by so quickly. There's never a dull or wasted moment. Much like a lot of Stanley Kubrick movies, a lot of the stuff in this film is not literal. It's kind of more symbolic and commenting on different things, such as consumerism and capitalism in the 80s. This film is very open to interpretation. You know, is it all in his imagination? Is some of it real, but some of it he's imagining it or dreaming it? Because obviously there's a lot of things that kind of logically don't add up in this film. Another thing I like about this movie, which isn't mentioned that often, is the John Cale score. That almost feels like a character in the film itself. You know, it has so much presence. It just feels like part of the movie. You know, right from the opening of the film, where we see, the posh food being made with the blood drips, but it turns out it's tomato sauce or whatever. Right through to that absolutely stunning ending of the film with that monologue and that really dissonant music from John Cale, just leaves the movie on such a high note. This whole movie looks great on 4K. It looks absolutely fine, but it's not one of those ones that blows you away. Like, certain movies are really like a big upgrade from the Blu-ray, and other movies are an upgrade but not as dramatically. For example, Clockwork Orange, the 4K and the Blu-ray of that are like night and day. Whereas with this, it is a bit sharper, it is a little bit more detailed, but it's not like, miles better than the Blu-ray. I really like the rhythm of this movie. We see these scenarios play out over and over again, but in slightly different contexts. Him saying things that are just utterly grotesque and repulsive, and other people just brushing it off and just completely ignoring it. We see him being kind of hilariously articulate about Phil Collins and Genesis and Whitney Houston and things like that, but yet he's a complete psychopath with no emotions. And it's all about kind of status and what you're supposed to like, and fitting into a lifestyle, and it's not actually his true feelings in any way. The whole movie is just a comment on materialism and consumerism of yuppie culture in the 1980s, and the kind of merging of individuals. How everybody kind of lies about who they are. There are no individuals, it's just people in suits who are kind of conforming to a certain status and social class, and it's all about how much money you've got, how big your apartment is, and things like that. Society turns a blind eye to the fact that he's a murdering psychopath, and he's more interested in his status and his money and his place in society. Christian Bale did a bit of classic method acting on this movie. He got his teeth changed because he didn't think his original teeth would be enough for the movie, which is fair enough. He's kind of like the Marco Pierre White of actors in a way. Very, very, very serious about his craft. But yeah, the sheer comedy of this movie is lost on so many people. It just goes right over their head, because I guess they see it as a horror thriller, I suppose, and it's just so much more than that. It's one of the greatest black comedies ever made. Christian Bale's facial expressions in this movie alone are absolutely golden. His face is a picture in this film. Those kind of expressions he does with the kind of cheek muscles, it's difficult to express, but like when he's really annoyed or something, he's almost like a sort of 10-year-old with Asperger's who hasn't got his way. But anyway, I watched this movie on 4K, and I also saw it at the cinema as well. Saw it at the cinema with my buddy Jack. We popped up to see it, went and saw it on the train. Got a bit of footage of that, actually. Take a look at this. Guys, look at this. That is a horrible gap. That is so large. Think of people that have kids. Think of elderly people. I know some elderly people that wouldn't be able to do that. That's a really big gap. Yeah, that is horrible. I'm literally going to hold the bar to get over that. That's not nice, man. So, of course, we've completely cosplayed as Patty Bateman and Sophie.
Want to do some business? Some drugs, maybe?
Excuse me, we're trying to do drugs. At the cinema, it was good. We were kind of just watching a print of the film, I guess, from when the movie came out in the year 2000. And you know, I mean, it's always a little bit blurry when you see it on 35mm. It's not the highest clarity format. It's more about the kind of feel of it and the texture. So yeah, of course the 4K looks better, but then again, the 35mm provides a unique experience. So both have their merits. You know, I like both personally, you know, I really do. So, yeah, that was it for this latest episode of Film Diaries. I do apologise for being a little bit tired. Some days I'm just, I don't know, I'm just really kind of tired and I'm like, you know, brushing through the video. But, yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I shall catch you in another episode of Film Diaries, hopefully very soon. I've actually stalled off watching movies the last few nights because the pile of movies I've got to talk about is just going to build up too much. So, yeah, I shall see you very soon. Bye-bye. Great experience seeing it.
Oh yeah, fantastic experience, fantastic film.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone in there fully understood the film, like the bloke sitting in front of you.
Well, I mean, there were two blokes sitting in front of me, and I laughed quite a few times. In fact, quite a lot of the other audience members did laugh quite a few times, and I don't think they got it. I think the humour was lost on them. So a lot of it is the humour that goes over your head, I think.
Yeah.